So I just realized that I have been doing this for a year now. This is episode number 26, which means that it must be my podiversary. And even though I didn't plan it that way, I could not have planned a better celebration than to spend a day and a half up at the Flock Fiber Festival in Seattle last weekend. It was an amazing experience. I have so much to show you, so much to talk about. The joy that I am feeling from meeting so many new people and connecting with old friends is just unimaginable. So let's talk about it all on the other side. Welcome everyone to, as I mentioned, episode 26 of Gary Knits, Gary Rides, a Craftivism podcast at the intersection of making things and doing good. My name is Gary. I am a knitter and a crocheter. I am also a cyclist and fundraiser for AIDS Lifecycle, which is an annual 7-day, 545-mile bike ride from San Francisco to Los Angeles, supporting the life-saving work of the San Francisco AIDS Foundation and the Los Angeles LGBT Center. You can find me on Instagram at Gary Knits, Gary Rides, and on Ravelry as Gary Knits and Rides. Everything that I talk about today is going to be included down below in the show notes, but here is a QR code that you can scan if you're watching this on your TV to get the show notes on your handheld device. There are going to be a lot of things to talk about today. As I mentioned up front, I went up to Seattle last weekend for the Flock Fiber Festival. It was fantastic. It was actually my second trip to Seattle that week. I was up there early in the week for a business trip, came back home, then flew up there. It has been really a crazy week or so because not only did I have that travel, we had wrapped up all the announcements for the End AIDS Knitalongs and Crochetalongs. I should have said up front that one of the things I do for my fundraising for AIDS Lifecycle is run a series of Knitalongs and Crochetalongs throughout the year where we pair up indie dyers and indie designers. We all work on their projects at the same time and raise a little money for AIDS Lifecycle. So we announced all of the fall Knitalongs and Crochetalongs. There are 7 projects, 5 designers, 5 dyers. I'm not going to go into all the details here today, but I will link you to a video that I recorded last week running down all of the projects and dyers and designers. There are also a series of Instagram lives that I reposted over here where I talk to each of the dyers and designers about their projects, about their business, how they got started in the design or dyeing end of things. Really interesting, some really great folks. So we'll be talking more about all of those projects as we gear up for Cast On, which is going to be September 1st. So we had that. We had Flock. I am also rolling out the first of the D-Stash for Good auctions on Instagram. That is another fundraiser that I run for AIDS Lifecycle. I'm in the process of posting. I think we have 294 items that will go up for auction starting, fingers crossed, on the 14th of August, and that will run through the 28th. It's a slow process. So I try to organize everything by yarn weight, and then within each of those categories alphabetically by dyer name. Doesn't always work out exactly that way. I've already found some errors in what I'm posting right now. But then I post those one at a time up to Instagram, and then hopefully on the 14th we'll open it up for the bidding. All the information about D-Stash for Good is in an FAQ that is linked in the show notes as well. So there's all of that going on in addition to just regular daily live stuff. It is a busy time for us in terms of concerts at the Hollywood Bowl. I think we have like 3 consecutive Sundays. Last Sunday we saw Portugal the Man, which was a band I was not super familiar with. It was kind of a disappointment. Sorry if you are a big fan of theirs. It just was a little boring. They didn't have much stage presence, in my humble opinion. But I'm really excited. This Sunday we have Maggie Rogers and Always, which are two bands that I do, singers and bands that I do enjoy. And sorry, I keep looking at here. Seems to be something moving past the window back and forth. So we have that going on as well. So it has been incredibly busy. I'm going to talk about what I've been working on in terms of makes, but I have a feeling that you are most interested in hearing about Flock and seeing what I picked up at the show. So, a couple of big picture. It was the first time that this was being done. It's probably at this point the biggest fiber festival on the West Coast since we lost Stitches. It was organized by Jess and the team at La Mercerie, which is a yarn store in Bainbridge Island, I believe, Washington. And they did a tremendous job of putting this together. It was extremely well curated, great mix of vendors, a really nice venue. Luckily, the weather cooperated with us, so it wasn't too hot. It wasn't air conditioned. It was in a big air hangar, but they were able to open up either end of it, and there was a nice breeze. I know some of the vendors got hot, but I thought it was relatively pleasant for the day and a half I was there. I was there for Friday night and Saturday most of the day, and then I flew back Saturday afternoon. So I went up on Friday. So that was, like I said, it's the first one that's been done. They are already talking about doing it next year. I think finding another venue. I would say that maybe one small quibble I had with the event was that the venue, although it was nice, was a bit far removed from downtown Seattle and hotels. So there weren't a lot of hotels around there. So if you're coming from out of town, you had a bit of a hike either on public transportation or in a taxi or whatever. I think a lot of the folks were local or had driven in, so it wasn't as big a deal for them. But it was a really nice location, kind of right there on the water, although most everything is right there on the water in Seattle. And as I said, it was a great mix of vendors, a lot of folks I knew, a lot of folks I did not know. So that was really fun. But it sounds like they're already making plans to do this again next year, looking at even bigger venues. So the Friday night event, which was just 2 hours, was a mask-only event, and then the other two were open. They did pre-sale tickets for at least Saturday. I don't know about Sunday. And if you had bought one of the pre-order tickets, you basically had a 2-hour window before they started selling tickets at the door. It never got super duper crowded in general, although the energy was wild. The vendors that had their super fans were mobbed. It was really something I had never quite seen before, having never been to Rhinebeck or the events up there. It did not. There was nothing at Maryland Sheep and Wool, which I went to this year, that was anywhere close to what was going on there. I'll talk a little bit about my Friday evening. But the energy all weekend, or for the days that I was there, was very, very high. People just really into getting out to. So I gave me the sense that the West Coast is really starved for some more fiber events. I just saw that Southern California, just last week, someone announced that they're going to be doing one in November in LA adjacent, so in Pomona, which is east of LA, over by Pasadena. That there's going to be some sort of fiber festival. So hopefully they can pull that together in time, because I think if this was any indication, that there is definitely some pent-up demand for for something on the West Coast. So anyway, I arrived Friday and went to help Caitlin of Porter Woolco set up her booth. So that was a lot of fun. I love her yarn, and I loved being able to see it all and help put the booth together. She was sharing a booth with Sarah from Green Goat Ranch, who does handspun yarn and fiber. Really cool, beautiful colored stuff. I'm going to show you some of that in just a little bit. So I did that Friday afternoon. and then they opened up for the event. I had gotten a ticket for that. Went to the hotel, cleaned up, came back, met up with Shannon, who is one of our Zoomers on Tuesday nights for the Knitalong and Crochetalong Zoom that we do every week, and then also met up with Laura from Always Be Kind Yarn. She did a sock yarn for our very first sock Knitalong 2 Prides, so not this past Pride, but a year ago Pride, and we've become Instagram friends, and she also did yarn for the winter sock Knitalong, the Resolutions sock. So it was just really great to finally see both of them in person, and the plan was to do a little shopping on Friday evening, and then we had a dinner planned with a bunch of people. But I asked if anyone in our Zoom group wanted, if there's anything that I could get for anyone, and someone said that yes, Explorer Knits had 4 yarns that were part of some sort of earlier collection, and if they had them on a certain base, if I could get those for them. So I was unaware of the kind of cult following that Explorer Knits has. I was familiar with the yarn, and I'd seen them at the Magpie store in Maryland when we were there for Maryland Sheep and Wool. They were doing a trunk show there, and it was busy, but I didn't really get this sort of intensity with which people want their yarn. So I got in there, a little bit after it opened, and I strolled back to the Explorer Knits booth. It was very crowded with people, and luckily I found the 4 skeins of the 4 colors of yarn that my friend wanted in the base that she wanted it, and I was like, excellent, I've done my job. I've still got plenty of time to shop around here, and I sort of there was a little checkout stand with 2 people standing in it. It looked like there was a couple people, and then I went behind them to jump in the line, and someone politely tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Oh no," and pointed, and there was a line that ran the entire length of the building just to check out. So part of me said, since I knew I was going to be there on Saturday, I was going to be working in the Porter Wool booth for the first hour of the show, that I should just put the yarn in my bag, leave it in the Porter Wool booth, and then come back first thing in the morning and check out. But that didn't seem right. So I ended up standing in line for 45 minutes just to check out with these skeins of yarn. So I've never seen anything like that in terms of the intensity with which the fans of Explorer Knits yarn. It was beautiful yarn, don't get me wrong, but the intensity with which they were wanting to get that yarn, and that carried through the weekend. There were certain things that just exclusive show colorways sold out really, really quickly. I think for most all of the vendors. A bag. Oh, I'm not going to show you that specific bag, but a bag from that crafty little fox. So she had put together a bag with some yarn from Nano Stitch, they were sharing a booth, and there were some stitch markers from someone else whose name escapes me. But those went like that Friday night, and they had held some back. Caitlin from Porter Wool Co., she had put together an exclusive colorway for the show called Flock Party, and I can't remember how many skeins we put out that first night, but I think we put out the entire stock that she brought, and she had it on several bases, and that also sold extremely, extremely well. So, like I said, it was that kind of energy that was there all weekend, that people were just really excited about the show and seeing all these vendors in one place. And again, kudos to Justin and the team at La Mercerie, because they really did a fantastic job of getting great vendors that people were excited to see. So Friday night, I basically did no shopping. Shannon and Laura were able to walk around and do a little shopping on Friday evening. Again, it was only 2 hours, but I had organized at the prodding of Nicole from Professor Pearl, who's here on YouTube, put together a little meetup dinner. There was a brewery that was a short walk from the venue, and so a bunch of us got together over there. It was fun. I mean, they had reserved some tables for us. It was another sort of like stand in line situation because you had to stand in line for your food and your drinks. But it was really cool to get everyone together. So we had Caitlin and her husband came by. Aaron from Fiber Hustle came, which was awesome to see him, and he was working on a project with some of his yarn, which was fantastic. It was actually the same yarn that I had bought from him, Kevin's Head, so that was cool. Nicole, as I mentioned, from Professor Pearl, who was able to borrow knitting needles from someone to finish a project that she was working on to work in one of the booths at the show. Angelina from Art and Alchemy was there. Jean Ann from Cerulean Orchid and her friend Bella. Jess from Jada Woo Design, so I'm going to talk about in a little bit as well. And then a bunch of the folks who were in what I'll call the Doodle booth, because it was Yarnaceous Fibers, Fangirl Fibers, and Pacific Knit Co. had put together this really, really cool booth that was all about the doodles, which are the color work kind of motifs that Pacific Knit Co. has kind of put together in patterns, and then also in these really cool decks of cards, which I'll show you in a sec as well. So they all came over. So that was Erica and Maggie and Emily from Fangirl Fibers, and Shannon and Aaron and Dawn. So that was really a fun event. We hung out there for a couple of hours until the place was just about shut down. And then I'm sure I was exhausted. I had not traveled except, a little bit on a plane. But putting together those booths is hot, sweaty work. And so everyone was, I think, pretty exhausted and had an early morning to get up. So we all kind of headed back to our respective hotels and Airbnbs. The next morning, as I mentioned, I was working for the first hour. We were doing a meet and greet at the Porter Woolco booth. Caitlin has done the yarn for the upcoming sock knit-along, the End AIDS sock knit-along fall edition. She has put together a beautiful colorway called Hope, which I guess I can just start showing things as well. But this is the Hope colorway, which she brought a bunch of to the show. It's not available for pre-order. Actually, today, I think, which is the 9th, it went up for pre-order, but she had some skeins available at the show. So I snagged one to give away. So I'm giving one of these skeins away, but you'll have to go watch the other video with all the knit-along information in it to find out how to enter for that. And I think she sold a fair number of them, so that was fantastic. I was really, really excited about it. So anyway, we were doing a meet and greet, sort of promoting the Knitalongs. We had a picture of the pattern, which is a Samba knit pattern called Embracing Our Nature. Beautiful cabled sock. Here's a picture of it. But we're just sort of promoting that for the first hour of the show, and then that gave me the rest of the day to roam around and do some shopping. So I got this skein of yarn from Caitlin at Porter Woolco. I should also just say, in terms of heart mail, which is usually what I call the things that people give me to add to the giveaway pile, Caitlin was very generous, and she has her first notions. These are whip strings, aka barber cords, and she gave me a sweater pack which has two 36-inch ones and one 96-inch one. So at some point in an upcoming upcoming knit-along, that will be one of the giveaway prizes. So speaking also of heart mail, even though it was in person, I should just mention that Sarah at Green Goat Ranch, who was sharing a booth with Caitlin, also gave me something for a future giveaway. So this is a wool, silk, neps, and sparkle hand spun on a super bulky weight, 2-ply, 56 yards. I think that's probably enough to make a really cool hat. So this is, again, from Green Goat Ranch. So thank you, Sarah, for this. I also bought one of her skeins of a smaller amount of hand spun in this beautiful color. It's called Avocado Toast. So that is really cool as well. I haven't played around much with handspun, but I think that would make a really fun hat for someone who's living in a cooler climate. So we were at Caitlin's booth, and while we were setting up on Friday, her booth backed up to someone else's booth. There was a curtain in between, and we were trying to hang up a sign, and all of a sudden, like, a head pops through, and I think it was Amanda from Knits by Amanda, and she was like, "Hey, who's this over here?" And we all started talking, and it ended up she was working along with Emily, the botanical knitter. Is that right, Emily? I think that's right. There were a lot of Emily's. Emily Fangirl Fibers for sure. I think it is Emily, sorry. But they were working in Courtney's booth from Silly Goose Yarn, who I've mentioned here on the podcast because she's done some great fundraising skeins of yarn. So everyone's head was kind of popping through, and it was really kind of fun to meet them. So one of the first stops I made on Saturday when I started shopping was to Silly Goose Yarns, and this was her show colorway. So I tried to be pretty mindful about I didn't buy a ton of yarn, at least a ton of yarn that I'm planning to keep. I'm going to use some for giveaways, etc. But when I did buy yarn, it was pretty much, with the exception maybe of that Handspun, it was pretty much a show exclusive. So it was things that people had dyed specifically for the show, which I always think is a fun kind of souvenir thing to have. So I got 2 skeins of her I Flocking Love It colorway, which is on her 75-25 fingering base. She had a really cute pair of socks. I'm going to reach out to her on Instagram because I asked someone in the booth what they were called. They told me, I forgot to write it down, but they were really beautiful, made out of this this yarn. So I will probably keep one of these for myself and put one in the booty stash for future Knitalong Crochetalong prizes. But I thought that was cute. And then she also had these stitch stoppers, sorry. Stitch stoppers were one thing that I was on the prowl for because I just started using them. I don't know why. I have never used them before, and since I'm carrying stuff in and out of cars and buses and things like that, I found them to be incredibly useful. So I thought those were fun and sweary. So that was my purchases at Silly Goose Yarn. While I was working in the booth there for the first hour, a couple people popped in. So first I was thrilled very early in the morning. After the stampede, so when the gates, the doors opened at 10, there was a massive stampede of people right down the aisle to the Explore Knits booth. I should rewind a little bit pre-opening. So I mentioned that the Little Crafty Fox had the bag that was a show exclusive with some mini skeins and some stitch markers, and they sold like that the first day, and they said they were going to put some more out for Saturday. I was in the cab from my hotel into the venue. It was probably 8:15 or so. The place didn't open until 9. And I get a text from my friend she's like, I got here I think she said she got there at 8, and she was already number 50 in the line to get in for 9. Just again, to show you, kind of give you an idea of the crazy energy that was around this, around the event. And she had desperately wanted one of these bags. And so just as the doors were about to open, I ran over to that booth. They had 5 out, and I was like, I would really like one myself, but I'm going to not take 2 and be greedy. So I got her one from the Little Craft Fox. Very cute little bag, and mini skein sets. But again, it's just the sort of intensity with which people were very eager to get shop started. After that first stampede, flew back to the Explore Knits booth. Tracy and Jody from the Grocery Girls came by the Porter Wool Co. booth, and we've been interacting for quite a while on Instagram, and it was really great to finally meet them in person. And I saw them several times throughout the day. I was able to give them like little stickers and pins, and it was really fun to chat with them just a little bit. Obviously, they were very popular selfie portrait targets, so they were mobbed with people pretty much all day long. But it was really fun to get to hang out with them for just a little bit. Also came into the booth was Monica from Mika Knits, who's here on YouTube as the Worsted Witch. She has her podcast, and she was doing like a little vlog. I haven't seen it up yet, but I'm gonna have to go check that out. So that was kind of working in the booth. A handful of people came by, and I'm gonna forget like half the people that I met. It was just a really fun. Oh, of course, I totally forgot at dinner the night. Casey from Casey Knits, who's also doing one of the projects for the Knitalong. We had met at Magpie, but we finally got to meet around this working on this Knitalong project. So that was awesome, and I got to spend some more time with her on Saturday on the floor because she was in the Sea Change Fiber booth with Sarah. So that was really cool to get to hang out with her as well. So I'm just going to kind of go through different things that I bought. I mentioned the bag from Crafty Little Fox. While I was getting that bag, I had seen one the day before that I thought was really cute and I was interested in, and it is this tiger bag, and all of her bags had this waxed canvas bottom, which is really nice. And so when I went over there early Saturday morning and said, "Oh, I'll come back later and grab the tiger bag," and she was like, "If you want it, you should probably get it now because it's going to be wild here again, intense on Saturday." And sure enough, it was. I went back there later in the day, and she was just down to a very handful of projects. So I'm glad that the event was successful for so many people. Hopefully that means that it'll get even bigger next year. But I thought this was great. Drawstring, little pockets on the inside, little leather or faux leather handle. This is her like a boss sized bag. So I thought that was really cool. So that was one of my first purchases because it was first thing Saturday morning. I mentioned getting to hang out with Jess from Jada Woo Designs. She had brought with her to her booth a handful of the kits that she's put together for the End AIDS Crochetalong. So she's teamed up with Tanya from Yarn Gone Wild Yarn Craft for the Save the Bun hat, and she actually had a couple samples in the booth in each of the colorways. So this is her Meadow kit because this variegated color is called Meadow. I'll pop a picture up here of the it's over here. Sorry, of the two samples so you can see the other colorway, which is more autumnal, and it's called Curiosity. I put on one of the hats. There's a picture on it up on Instagram. It's a really fun project. I think it's going to be a ton of fun to work on. You can make 3 of them from one kit, and Jess is being super generous, and so $45 of each of these kits is going to be donated to AIDS Lifecycle. It's on this really beautiful silk merino base, and she's just a fantastic human being. She had some beautiful yarn in her booth. She is in the process of opening up a community space. It's going to be like her dye studio and kind of have a little like local yarn store where she's going to be able to sell her initially her yarn and then hopefully add to that over time. And so she just got approved to take her Kiva loan into the public funding process. So I think there's like 35 days or whatever for that loan to get funded to help her build out that space. So that is Jess from Jada Woo Designs. Really, really pretty stuff. And I guess while we were talking about the Knitalong and Crochetalong folks that I got to meet, so I got to meet Jess for the first time in person. I got to meet Casey, who is working on the Palm Springs Cowl, which I will show you in a little bit when we get around to whips and whatnot. And I got to meet Jean Ann from Cerulean Orchid. She was actually working on a sample of the Crochetalong project. She's putting together a pattern for a hat and mitt set called the Rainbow Eucalyptus hat and mitts. and she had just gotten the yarn from Teal Torch Knit. She had done a sample up in a similar color, but it wasn't the exact color, and so she was working on it when I came into her booth. She also does amazing stickers. I did not know this when I started talking to her about the Crochetalong, but she has a sticker club that gives out monthly stickers. Stickers were a big deal at the event. Stickers, and I forgot to bring them in here, friendship bracelets of all things. I think it's a Taylor Swift phenomenon. I saw an article in the paper about that recently, but a lot of people were giving away and trading friendship bracelets with little phrases and the names of their brands and things like that. But anyway, these are called a sheep of rainbows, or rainbow of sheep stickers that I got from the Cerulean Orchid booth. She had a ton of really fun stickers. So, I think a couple of these will find their way onto my yarn storage bin, which is what I do with all my stickers. And then some may end up in giveaway packs for Knitalong and Crochetalong. So, got to hang out with Jean Ann, see the progress that she's made in the actual yarn from Teal Torch Knits. Looks fantastic. It's a beautiful pattern. And so that was a ton of fun to meet them. And then I think, in terms of current Knitalongs and Crochetalongs, I think that was it. But there was definitely a lot of talking to designers and dyers and things about future projects. So stay tuned. Hopefully, some really cool things will come out of my going up there. In terms of, I said I wasn't planning to buy a ton of yarn. I was really thinking that I would spend where I did most of my spending would be on notions and bags and things like that. So that's the Crafty Little Fox bag was one that I had been focused on. The other vendor that I was super excited to see, particularly because I've never seen them in person, was Reshna at Hello Lavender. So if you are not familiar, she makes these incredibly detailed stitch markers, and she does jewelry and things like that as well. These are little ice creams. There's a little ice cream sandwich. She had teamed up with Jake of Ken Yarn a couple years back when he did his Mean Girls or Mean Pearls collection, and she had done stitch marker sets, and they're among my favorite stitch markers. They're so beautiful and so detailed, and I had heard, and luckily by the time I got down there, it had not sold out, but she did this one. So this was the Flock, incorporated the Flock logo as the little sheep there with, then she put her flowers on there. So I was able to get that show exclusive, but she was really charming, and I loved meeting her, got a picture with her, super sweet, but she just does the most beautiful work. So if you ever have a chance to see them in person, worth seeking out. They are, you can obviously the work that went into them. So they're not your everyday stitch markers. They're a little more pricey, but the beauty is really, really special. So that was one of the things that I was most excited about, was to get to see Hello Lavender. Let's see, where else did I wander in terms of yarn? I got another exclusive skein. It was interesting that the skeins for this show were very varied in terms of the exclusive colorways. I felt like when we were at Maryland that a lot of the show colors, and maybe Maryland puts out like sort of some theme or something, but they all sort of were pink. There was a lot of pink in the colors, and this had a lot of variety. So this is from a dyer who is unfamiliar to me, called Junian Sai. I think they're she's out of Washington, and this is called Pump Up the Volume, and it was the exclusive colorway for the show. Fingering 75-25. Anytime I see a color that is like bright and vibrant, I think it would be a great background, or one of the colors in a brioche that also has a more solid color. So that may be what that becomes. I mentioned the Doodle booth, so that was Fangirl Fibers, Pacific Knit Co, and Maggie at Yarnaceous. it was it was such a fun booth. So they had this like doodle bar. So the doodles, if you're not familiar, and I'm sure you are, but the first I noticed became familiar with them was a couple years ago. There was a holiday doodle cowl and hat set that was very, very popular on Ravelry, and it's basically stranded color work. And Jamie has created these, these little motifs that you basically then build the pattern around. You pick and choose, kind of choose your own adventure, and you stack them on top of each other. And it's kind of like this little fair isle, but they're kind of fun, fun motifs. More than just little decoratives, although some decorative ones as well. And what she's started doing is, in addition to putting things out in patterns, is she's put them together in these little card decks. And so this one is the summer. I bought 2 of them, and we're going to talk about stranded color work in a little bit, and why I went a little overboard in terms of jumping in feet first with buying 2 doodle packs. But they're basically on these cards, and they have instructions on making a cowl, making an infinity cowl, just sort of like the dimensions of it, and then you just pick and choose these different. So there's a crab, there's a whale fin going into the water. So all along a theme of summer fishes. And then you just kind of pick and choose and stack them on top of each other until you have your desired dimensions for your cowl. And it's just a really fun kind of way of putting together the pattern. So this was the summer one for the show. She had developed a smaller one that was all Seattle. So you see there's the fish fin going in there, but there's also Bigfoot and the Seattle skyline and an umbrella with rain. So I picked up this one as well. So she had the doodles. Then the dyers had put together this sort of make your own doodle bar. So there were all these little mini skeins in a bunch of their colorways that you could pick and choose and put together kits. They had some predetermined colors and the doodles put together. But it was an incredibly fun booth. They're a fun bunch of women. So we got to hang out at dinner the night before, and it was just, I went over there and hung out a little bit with them. I did not buy any of the yarn because I have plenty of minis and scraps and things like that. If I want to really get into doodling, I have plenty of options. But I know Maggie has a couple of the kits available up on her website after the show. But it was just really fun. It was they put together a really, really good booth, and I think they're doing it again at one of the events around Rhinebeck, maybe Woolen Folk. I can't keep a track. A lot of people from this event are going to be up at Rhinebeck for one of the events, but some are going to Indie Untangled, some are going to Woolen Folk. But if you're headed up to Rhinebeck to those events, definitely stop by and check out the Doodle Ball, because it's a really, really fun kind of idea, and it was really fun to have all 3 of them together, because they're just really fun people. In terms of a couple other things, again, as I said, I was looking for bags. Could not. This is Seattle Sky Dye Works. I feel nitty and witty and gay. I mean, come on. I'm going to pass that up. I also found a little notions bag from All Knit Up Designs, which had bikes on it. So again, kind of hard to pass that up. The other yarn that I picked up besides Silly Goose, this will probably stay in the stash, but Spin Cycle was there. Their booth was also incredibly popular, as you can imagine. But I don't think anyone beat Explorer Knits in terms of all day long. I went back anytime I was back there. There was a very long line to check out. But this was their show colorway called Flip It and Reverse It. So this will get added to my growing Spin Cycle collection, and one of these days I will figure out which Andrew Mowry pattern I need to incorporate them all in. Right next to us at Porter Wool Co.'s booth was I think it's a local yarn store up in Washington called Pearl 2 Walla Walla. So they're on Instagram as Pearl 2 W2, I think, or 2W. And they're I think their house yarn is called Pearls Before Wine. And this was a colorway that they did up for the show, inspired by the Kraken, which I learned is the Seattle hockey team. So it's called the Deep, and it was, I guess, inspired by the colors of the Kraken. Originally, I thought this looked like it would be a good assigned pooling yarn. I think that maybe the colors are too long. I may play around with that a little bit, but if not, I think I found a two skein. It's sport weight, a two skein sport weight shawl. That eventually this would be a good match for a shawl pattern. So that was from Pearls Before Wine from Pearl 2 Walla Walla. And then the last yarn that I bought was from Pearls and Postulates. So Nicole, who's Professor Pearl or Prof Pearl on Instagram, and here on YouTube, she has her own YouTube channel. I think she just celebrated her second podiversary, maybe, I don't know, but we've become YouTube, Instagram friends, and she was the one who spurred me on to organize the dinner with everyone, and so we got to hang out, and she is delightful. She has just come out with a new shawl pattern called Wool Gathering, so she was releasing that in conjunction with the festival, and it was done or the samples that she had done were in yarn from Pearls and Postulates. One of the things that Pearls and Postulates does is she has a whole line of yarn around women in STEM. So Nicole is a math education professor. She has one that is inspired by an astronomer, just all sorts of women who are in the STEM field. And it's a two skein shawl, so it's a skein of fingering weight and a skein of lace mohair. And she was showing it off in the booth, and they had another sample in the booth. And I saw a colorway that I thought would be perfect for me. So it's olive, olive and burgundy with some purpley speckles in there. It is called astrometry, which is a branch of astronomy used to calculate the positions, measurements, and orbits of celestial bodies such as planets and stars. So I got a skein of that in the fingering weight. I got a skein of it in the matching silk mohair. And hopefully, I made no promises about when this will happen, but the plan will be to use this to make her wool gathering shawl really, really lightweight and kind of airy. So I thought it was for a warmer climate like where I am most of the time, that it would probably be a nice one to have on cool summer evenings, perhaps at the Hollywood Bowl, which is oftentimes where I have a shawl on. So this is Pearls and Postulates, and I don't know where I think she must be based somewhere up around it. Nicole's up in the Oregon area, so they might be nearby. So that was it basically in terms of yarn. So I feel like the spin cycle, the Pearls and Postulates, maybe one skein of Skinny Goose, and the Handspun, Kraken. Okay, maybe it was a fair amount of yarn, but I'm still on track for the year to end up net negative. But we may have to reevaluate some of these, and maybe more of it will go to the booty stash. Last few things that I got were also kind of small little notiony things. There was a yarn company called Bigfoot Yarn Co. I didn't get any of her yarn, but she had this adorable. Let's see, focus there. But it is Bigfoot knitting a scarf, and I thought that was a cute progress keeper. And then a vendor who I'd seen before, who mainly works in ceramics, called either JM PDX, which is Portland, or Jam Portland. I'm not really sure how how they refer to themselves. But I love their stuff. It's just I don't need any more coffee mugs. We have a gazillion of them. But I did find this really cute little rainbow yarn stitch marker tray. So I did pick up that, and then they had these adorable rainbow yarn chicken pens, and so I thought those would be good for the giveaway pile as well. So that was that. I mean, really the last thing that oh no, there's one more thing. But I did get a Flock Fiber Festival commemorative badge. So there you can see the little sheep logo that Hello Lavender included in her stitch marker. One of the groups of people that I got to meet were the Coven Collective. It was a group of 4 or 5 women. They all had these big black hats on. They were a ton of fun. We sat and chatted for a second. They do kind of all sorts of things. I think there's a dyer in there, a stitch marker, pattern makers, etc. And we swapped pins and stickers. And so they gave me this really awesome Raven pen, super cool, and a little moon stitch marker. And so we chatted, and since they're involved in all sorts of things, I'm hoping that at some point down the road, maybe there is a future collaboration that we can do in terms of a Knitalong or Crochetalong design. And the very last thing I bought, which will kind of lead into something a little bit later in the Craftivism section, is Kristen at Desert Panda Fiber Arts had her booth set up, and she also had bags and some other things from Will, who is rightfully so on Instagram. And he had just recently apparently gotten a 3D printer and put together these 3D printed. Now, I don't know what they were intended for. When I saw it, I immediately thought darning needle storage. So it's a spiral and just screws back in there, this really cool prism colored thing. So I grabbed one of those. I should also mention, and now I don't know where it is. Hold on, I think it may be right here. 1 second. This was also in the Pearl and Postulates booth. Yes. Her father carves darning needles out of PVC one, but also out of bone. And so this, I got one of his carved, which I just think is so cool, darning needles made from deer bone. And it's pretty big gauge, so you're not going to be using it on fine stuff, but I just thought it was like one of those things that's just kind of like too cool to pass up. So it will go, it goes in this little beaker, but it eventually will go into the 3D printed thing. I had mentioned that this is going to lead into something a little bit later in the Craftivism section. The first Saturday night after I had left, Kristen, who had a trailer that had back inventory as well as back inventory for Will's bags and bins and other equipment that she uses to go from show to show, got broken into, and they stole all of her back inventory, all of Will's back inventory, and, you know, kind of stunk for all of them involved, and kind of just put a little bit of a negative vibe on the thing. I don't know exactly where it happened. If she was at a hotel or Airbnb or whatever, but there was a padlock that was snapped, and so someone walked off with a bunch of fiber and yarn, which seems really random. But you know, in the spirit of this community and you know, things that I talk about a lot in terms of this is a great place for people coming together to help each other. The Flock team had been pulling things together for a raffle where you could buy tickets at their booth to raffle off, and I think that they donated all, if not all, a portion of the raffle ticket sales to Kristen. They also put on their, you know, in their stories and their Instagram, her PayPal and Venmo so that folks could reach out to her. And one of the things that they suggested is buying a gift card from her site. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in the at the very end. But that was basically it for Flocked. Again, it was Flock, not Flocked. It was a fantastic event, and the organizers did a tremendous job. A really great mix of makers there in terms of bags and yarn and fiber and notions and all sorts of things. It was just very well edited and curated. The only thing, and I mentioned this to someone, the only thing that I did not see there was self-striping sock yarn. So I didn't, there was none of the sort of bigger names in that space were there, or if people had self-striping sock yarn, they didn't bring it to sale. So that was the only sort of void I saw, because it was a really nice mix of some folks who do natural dyeing, some folks that do breed specific yarns, and non-superwash, superwash, indie dyed. Some of the bigger names, Spincycle, the La Mercerie booth had La BNMA, so Amy from La BNMA was there signing books, but they had Woolberry and some of the bigger names in the indie dyed space as well. So I thought it was a fantastic mix. Hope it was a huge success for all of the vendors, so that next year can be in an even bigger space and get more vendors in there and just really put an anchor down as a premier fiber festival on the West Coast, because there are lots of great little ones, I think, but in terms of like a destination one where folks will fly in from all over the West and Northwest and Southwest to be a part of it, I think that is something that we could really use. So I'm going to regroup for 1 second while I shift things around. Okay, welcome back. I just wanted to clear some space out here. Before we get into WIPs and FOs and all of that, I did have some other things that were not acquisitions. It was a gift for my birthday. We had friends visiting us a couple of weeks ago from the New England area, and for my birthday, they brought me. One of them is a knitter, so that was he knew exactly where to go to to reach my heart. But I just wanted to show that off because it was really sweet of him, and it was new stuff to me. So I think this was from maybe his local yarn store. It says dyed in Boston, but it was a dyer I was unfamiliar with called Dirty Water Dye Works. Brewing, color, and creativity. And so he got me a great mix of solids, including colors that I don't really have exact matches of, which is great, because I've been trying to go through, especially my finger weight yarn, and destashing duplicates, but I don't think these actually match exactly any colors that I have, and could actually be kind of fun to play around with some doodles. So also, depending on what sort of Stephen West comes up with, it could be some fun to mix some of these into a mystery Knitalong sauce. So they got me that yarn, and then some notions, really cute. A needle gauge in the state of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, a little llama or alpaca, says llamas, progress keeper, stitch marker, and then something that I can never have enough of. This is from NNK Press, and they're these tiny little snips. I swear I probably have 6 pairs of snips, and they are never where I need them, so I'm always happy to have new ones. So thank you guys for those. In terms of actual making, I've had a lot of plane time back and forth to Seattle. So I've actually, in a couple bus trips to the Hollywood Bowl, so I've actually gotten a fair amount of work done on a couple of projects. I actually have an FO. It is blocking right now. I did not get my act together, but I finished my Pop-Tart shawl. I will have that to show next time. I'm really happy with the way it turned out, but I'll show you that in a couple weeks. When we announced the Knitalong for one of the fall Knitalongs, which is the Palm Springs Cowl by Casey of Casey Knits, with yarn kits from Nancy at Trilogy Yarn. Nancy had knit up a sample using the eggplant color as the main color and the sand dune color as the contrast. And so I said, oh, well, I will buy some yarn up front, and then I'll knit the sample up in the second colorway. And with the caveat that this will be my first ever stranded knitting project, stranded colorwork knitting project, and I'm not going to knit it nearly as fast as she did, because she did hers in like 3 days. But it has gone pretty quickly for me, and here is where we are. I am almost 2/3 of the way done. It's so funny. It looks really different. I'm seeing the reverse of it when I look at it versus what I see on the screen. Anyway, so this is with the sand dune, which is this sort of tan with some gray undertones as the main color, and eggplant, which is this, get the colors out, is this kind of tonal eggplant color as the contrast. Here is the sand dune, and this is a sport weight yarn. Great thing about this project is that, well, there are many great things about this, but in terms of what I thought about it when we were first putting the kits together and planning it out, is that with 2 skeins, which is what you get in the kit, which are available now from Trilogy yarns, you actually can make it both ways. So you can make it this way, and you can make the reverse of this from the 2 skeins of yarn. So let's talk about this pattern for a second, because I am having a ball with this. As I mentioned, it is my first stranded colorwork pattern. I wasn't sure how that was going to go for me. I started out my knitting life as a thrower, and then switched over at some point to knit Continental. So I kind of at least knew the mechanics a bit, but wasn't sure how quickly it was going to pick up, and wasn't sure about holding the two strands at the same time on the 2 different fingers. But it came back to me pretty quickly, or I kind of got the knack of it pretty quickly, much easier than I thought it would be. I don't know what was holding me back from doing stranded colorwork all of this time. This pattern is an excellent starter pattern if you've never done it before. Couple reasons. First, there are no floats to carry, so none of the you never have a float that's longer than 6 stitches, and that only happens, I think, on 2 rows of a 20-row repeat. So that's number one. And I'm going to come back to that in just a second. The other thing is every other row is straight knitting. So you only are working with 2 strands on every other row. So what I found was, when I first was doing it, the first couple or 3 rounds of the colorwork, I was like, I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted at the end. Thank goodness I have this straight knitting row to do. So it does give you a break, both through your mind and your fingers and your coordination, a break in there. In terms of the floats, so you do only, the longest float is 6, and it only happens twice in the 20-row repeat. What I found, because it doesn't happen that often, is it's a great chance to practice catching the floats. So I will catch them after the 3rd stitch, I will catch them. And even though you probably don't have to, I just found it's a great way to sort of get the mechanics of that down, so that when I go on to another project where you have to do it, it's kind of already ingrained a little bit into my head, but it's not something I have to do constantly. I'm really happy with the way this has turned out for, as I called it, baby's first colorwork project. I found my tension was a little tight on the colorwork rows in the beginning, but I've kind of loosened that up a bit. The stitches, as I'm looking at it on the screen, maybe don't look super even, but I think that will largely block out. But it's not puckering or anything like that, and it's not super duper loose in places. So I'm really happy. I think these colors look great together. I first thought the purple, the eggplant as the main color, and the sand dune was going to be my favorite, but I'm really loving how this is working up. I really think it looks quite sophisticated in terms of colors. So I'm really enjoying this project. It has gotten me jazzed about doing more stranded colorwork. I was probably to the halfway point when I got to Seattle, and I took it to, to Casey. I was like, oh my gosh, look what I've done it. And I just went into that doodle bar that Maggie and Emily and Jamie had put together, and all I wanted to do was like do all the doodles. They all look so much fun, and so I kind of had to hold myself back. I got the cards. I actually have, and this is probably going on like 3 years now. I actually already have kitted up a holiday doodle cowl and hat set. I think it's mainly with like Madeline Tosh yarns. I bought the yarns and the pattern a couple years ago, and I was planning to make it for the holidays. And I think I was too nervous about starting up a stranded colorwork project and thinking that like I wasn't going to be able to do it, and I was going to get this thing started up, and it was just going to, I would get frustrated and then leave it, and I didn't want to do that. Now that I've gone through this pattern, much more confident, and I think that I don't know if I'll get it done this year, but I definitely am not afraid about like just starting it, because I'm almost 100% sure it's something I'm going to be able to complete. So that is the Palm Springs Cowl by Casey Knits. It is one of the Knitalong projects that we're going to be starting on September 1st, running through October 31st. Yarn kits from Trilogy Yarn on her sport base are available now, and Nancy is generously donating all the shipping. So whatever you pay for shipping, she's going to donate to my AIDS Lifecycle fundraising. So if you haven't gotten a kit yet, definitely do that. Her yarn's beautiful. I think those two colors work really, really well together, and it's a super fun pattern. If you're a pro at stranded colorwork, it's going to be a nice kind of TV mindless knitting project. It's 20 rows, and I can't remember what it is across, but it's like 15 stitches, and it's really memorable. Once you get the first couple repeats done, you're like, okay, I got this. And so I think for someone who's really comfortable with stranded colorwork, it's kind of a nice, fun, easy project. For those of us who are novices, I think it's a great way to dip your toe in the water. So that is the Palm Springs Cowl. The other thing, and I'm going to get blinded here by the light. Let me see if I can pull it down a little bit, maybe. The other thing that I have made really good progress on, and happy to report is not trying to kill me anymore, is my Rhinebeck sweater. So this is the Painting Honeycombs sweater by Stephen West. I am just about to start the final colorwork section of the yoke. So here we go. So this is short rows of the back of the neck. Let me see if I can. So here's where we are. I have one more of these big, they keep getting bigger, blobs, rows of blobs to do. So that's probably 11 or 12 rows. And then we go into, I think, stockinette for the body. So yarn I am using here is Shibui Knits Haven is the blue. It is a merino cashmere blend. The colorway is called Suit. And then the colorway, rather than do it as he shows in his project photos, which is to use a different color for each of the colorwork sections, I'm using a single color of variegated yarn, which, as you can see, is highly variegated. It's called Rum Punch. It's by Brooke at Fully Spun, who unfortunately has stopped dying for the time being, although I think she may still have some stuff on her website. She's having a big sale out, so there's a better look at it. It's been fun. I mean, it's if you watched my last episode, you know that I had some fits and starts with both the cast on and the short rows and getting started on this the colorwork section. But once I ripped it out and started it again, I'm very happy with the way that it turned out. So I will say the one thing I'm a little concerned about, and if anyone has ever knit this before or maybe has any tips, because these blobs get progressively bigger, both longer and taller, the number of rows that you're carrying this blue section over gets longer and longer. So it's no more stitches in here than it was at the very beginning. They're just getting taller and taller and stretched out more and more and more. I assume that when you block it, you're going to be able to stretch it out enough, but I am worried about it kind of puckering this way. I think because it's only 3 stitches or so here, the puckering this way is not going to be that big of a deal. But if I just hold it, you can kind of see that it wants to pull in this way just because they're getting stretched more and more. And the next row is even bigger, so it's going to be even more of a stretch. So I don't know. I've been trying to think in my head about any way to sort of combat that, and the only thing I can think of is to try to, when you first make those 3 stitches like I'm doing right here on this first row, is try to be super loose with them so they have a little extra stretch in them. But I don't know. I don't know if that's the way to do it. And again, it may be just once it stretches out that kind of gets taken care of. But I'm happy the way it turns out. I think these colors look fantastic together. I love when you get these little pops of the navy in Brooks yarn to sort of play off of the main color. I think it's going to be a really fun sweater, as long as we can get the fit situation taken care of around the neck especially. Then I think I'm going to be very happy with this. It's going to be a little heavy for regular use here in California, but I think if we get some autumnal weather at Rhinebeck this year, it'll be a nice Rhinebeck sweater to have. So, hopefully by the end of the weekend, I will be done with the colorwork section, and then I think we are just into the round and rounds until we get to sleeves. And then I think you just do the body. I should probably read these patterns ahead of time instead of just taking it line by line when I get to them. But my goal is to try to get the bulk of this done kind of before Labor Day. We're going on vacation, in September. And I'll have some time when we get back from vacation before Rhinebeck, which I think is like third week of October. And I'm thinking maybe if I get the bulk of the body done, that having sleeves for a week or two would be easily doable. And so maybe I don't take this with me on holiday, and maybe take the shawl that I was hoping to make for Rhinebeck. This cowl will be done. I will have all the cowl. So this cowl will be done. I have all the Knitalong and Crochetalong projects to be working on as well. So those will probably be the better travel option. We'll see. I forgot to bring in with me today the other WIP that I have, which is the Knit Chat Cowl, that is in the self-striping yarn. I think I'm in the third of 6 sections to be done. It's going well. It's great bust knitting as well. I will show that again next week since I'm already running long here, or next time since I'm already running long. That along with my Pop-Tart WIP. So I think with that, I'm just going to wrap it up with a little bit of craftism, turning back to the situation with Desert Panda Fiber Arts, and rightfully so. I will link to both of them down below in the show notes. But one of the things that was suggested by folks was, since Kristen has lost some inventory and may not have a ton of things available in her shop when she gets back home, to purchase to try to help her out, was to purchase gift cards and then use them down the road when she's had a chance to restock, so she gets some cash flow, and she's able to get some replenishment going on with inventory. And then once she's settled, you could use that gift card to pick up something. So likewise, I reached out to Will at Rightfully So about when maybe he's going to have things back up in his shop, or whether or not there might be gift cards available as well. He does bags. As I mentioned, he did this really cool, I think it's him. I hope I'm almost positive when Chris and I were talking, she said he just got a 3D printer, but these really cool 3D printed kind of notions. And if I get any word back from him before this is finally edited, I'll pop in here with a postscript. But that's what I'm going to do. So I am buying a $50 gift card from Desert Panda Fiber Arts, and I am going to give that away to someone, a viewer of YouTube. So if you would like to be entered into that giveaway, just post in the comments down below using the prompt panda. So, and before the next episode, I will go through, and anyone who has panda in their comments, I will throw into the random picker, and I will get you a $50 gift certificate to Kristen's shop. She has beautiful yarn and fiber, lots of fun rainbow stuff. So check her out. If there is something in the shop that you are into getting now, please go ahead and buy that and help her out. It was a terrible, kind of a terrible end to what had been an otherwise fantastic event for, I think, for everyone, and just kind of brought the mood down a little bit. But hopefully she'll be able to get things back in order sooner rather than later. And with that, thank you very much for spending some time with me, taking time out of your week to spend it with me, to see what I'm working on, to see the stuff that I was able to pick up at Flock. Hopefully more of us will be able to head up there next year and make it an even bigger event. If you enjoyed this episode, I would appreciate it if you would give it a thumbs up. If you are not already a subscriber, please consider subscribing. It helps me with the algorithm and to continue to grow this community. And with that, thanks so much. I'll see you in a couple weeks. Bye.